Well, thank you, Darin. It's great to have you here today, and I'm excited to go into some burning questions that a lot of our listeners have about what's going on in the world. And so I'd like to begin our conversation, if you would. Can you explain some of the intel reports that are suggesting that we may have coordinated terrorist attacks in the US?
Yeah, Michael, thanks for having me join you today, and it's an honor to do so and to have your listeners join in with you later on. So the intelligence reports are pretty unique, and frankly, it's not just over the last few years, but this has been something that many of us have expected for at least 20 years, if not more. And part of it is because it's part of the playbook that was written in China and it's being played out across multiple countries. It's not just ours. I work with the Global Veterans Coalition, where the immigration invasion, as I call it, is happening specifically heavily across Europe, and it's actually more advanced and worse there. So the intelligence reports, I guess, that to make it simple, are a combination of my own personal networks of people that I trust, telling me exactly what's going on, where they live. It's uh, connections in the Darien Gap, Panama, all the way up through Mexico to the southern border, where I have people work on the southern border, and people in different parts of the nation who are seeing what is happening firsthand. So, when we say intelligence reports, this is going to be the people and the organizations and those that I work with directly. The FBI, the CIA, and all those different agencies may be getting some of those reports as well. Unfortunately, the way things are these days, the smart people, I guess you could say, don't trust generally what those agencies are putting out and seek their information from somebody else. So that's where I'm getting the information, and it was also known to be part of a bigger plan for many years. I've collected intelligence all over the world, including in East Asia, specifically on the Korean Peninsula, but that involved a lot of different countries, not just them, and read up on a lot of what these countries are trying to do and how they're trying to do it in the United States. So this is more like the realization of an anticipated action than it is late breaking news for those of us who've been watching it for a long time.
And what are those intel reports saying about this moment?
Well, first of all, that the people coming across the southern border, there are certainly legitimate people probably seeking asylum, trying to make a better way, a better life for themselves and their families. They are drowned out by a large quantity of people who are coming across the border who come from China, who are well funded, who are single military age males. And we've got the paperwork and the logbooks and the pictures of the cash and the maps and the planning and the preparation to prove that that's exactly what they're doing. And when they hit our border, of course, we kind of laugh because we say, yeah, go Governor Abbott, because he's busing people across the country to New York and other different cities. I look at it from a different perspective, and others that I talk to are also looking at it this way, that really all we're doing is using taxpayer funds to move the crime and terrorism across the country to the large metropolitan areas all over. Denver being one of the main hubs right now, unfortunately. But that's what the reports that I'm seeing are saying, is that you can expect the crime to ramp up, and you should also be expecting that there to be some sort of uh, terrorist planning going on, and we don't know what the trigger is. We don't know exactly what their target is, but we can expect it to be something along the lines of critical infrastructure, things that make and sustain life or preserve life, and sustain how America is used to operating. So that's what we're seeing. That's what we're anticipating. And so far, everything that all the reporting that we're getting from trusting sources are telling people that this is coming sooner than later, to not be surprised by it, and to prepare for it.
A big part of what we're doing with Case Surge is not about fear mongering; it's about preparation. And so,
Mm-hmm.
tell this to me and to our audience. Before I ask this question, I want to preface it by saying that, right, we're trying to get this information out so that you can be prepared, not to unduly stoke fear. But with that said, my mind goes back to things like 9/11, obviously, which just happened in Israel a few months ago. If you would, it sounds like there could be multiple cities. One of them may be Denver. If you could paint a picture of what this would look like so that people have an understanding of what we may be up against in the next few weeks or months, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. And some of this stuff I'll use or I'll fall back on to where I was working in the military, both in the intelligence field, aviation fields, and others. And we describe things in the words of most dangerous course of action
Mhm.
and most likely course of action. So, what is the most dangerous? Picture in your mind some sort of activation code given to terror cells across the country in multiple cities simultaneously, and they all have their own targets that are there to create mass confusion and chaos. And that could be taking down power grids. It could be snarling traffic. It could be infecting water supplies. I mean, you can pick the number and types of targets that are out there because most of them are in some way vulnerable. That's really the most dangerous. And why would, let's just say in theory that China is the one fomenting this and trying to want it to happen? Why would they want something like that to happen? Well, the best way to keep America out of the Pacific, and specific with regards to their aspirations for Taiwan, is to create mass confusion and chaos in the United States to where we can't respond the way we need to, if we need to, which is, of course, a decision that would have to be taken later. That's the most dangerous. Most likely, though, it seems like there are smaller terror cells. What's the difference between criminality and terrorism? Not a whole lot, but that will do the same thing, but maybe not quite as choreographed as we imagine it could be in both timing and multiple locations, that kind of thing. Maybe not as effective or in near the quantity. But it also could mean that there's, I live in a small town of 35,000 people. Let's just say that there were 4 people who took up arms and wanted to create a disturbance here in Montana state capital of Helena. Well, that's something that has never been truly seen in this city before and would cause a lot of chaos, and a lot of people would not be prepared for that. So, given those 2 scenarios, what we can do most is tell people, like you said, is build a team that prepares you for either one of those cases. Plan for that worst, though, and regardless of which way it goes, you've got a crew of people that have skill sets and talents, and you've thought through some of these things, and you're ready to deal with it in your own way. And, for instance, I'm running a private security company in my hometown here, and I'm connected directly to the sheriff. He trusts me and he works with me on things. And if he needed to, he knows he could come directly to me. And I've got about 15 to 20 people ready to go at a moment's notice who have been training for worst case scenarios and hoping that we never need them.
So there's a two-part question. One, it sounds like this is quite imminent. So what would your time frame be on this? And number two, going back to 9/11, or what just happened in Israel a few months ago, both of those events dramatically changed those countries. They dramatically changed the world. So what if this does occur, and we'd like to know when we think it might, how would this affect daily life for America and for the world?
Yeah, that's a hard one, but we have to be able to think it through and come up with a plan to deal with it the best we can. And again, as always, hoping it's never needed.
Mhm.
But from what it looks like to me, in the reports we're getting, it seems like somewhere between May and October is the prime window. And of course, this is tied to election politics and a variety of other things, not only in the United States, but if you're an overseas adversary who's looking at the best window of time to do something very aggressive, they're going to want to do it while Biden's in office, and whether he wins or loses. So their time window potentially could be shrinking in their minds before we could get a commander in chief who knows what he's doing. Much remains to be seen there. So that is generally, I guess, the time frame that I'm worried about and focused on, and how would it look like in America. So let's just consider Israel. Like you said, on October 7th, Israel's about the size of New Jersey. So picture something like a smaller version of Israel happening across 30 states. and maybe not that violent, maybe not as quite as significant, but you don't know because a lot of these people coming across the border are from North Africa, Central Asia, Middle East. They're very capable of that kind of violence here. They hate us at least as much as Israel, sometimes more. But that would change the fabric of this country because of what you're going to do, or one of the results would be that people are going to become very locally focused. And I've seen this many times overseas in countries, and that's essentially what you're describing is the beginning process of becoming tribally aligned rather than aligned, nationally and nationally politically within states and things like that. Afghanistan's a perfect example. The lines on the map are interesting, but it's the tribes that matter.
Mhm.
So depending on the scale of this thing, if it happens, people are going to become very insular, very locally focused. And that's part of the reason why we have started this idea of a county guardian program and building our network with Restore Liberty across the country is if we can establish the trust lines now across the country and work with politicians who align with us and all these kinds of things, we can expand our team and be able to deal with any situation a lot better than if we'd walked into this blind and went one day a nation at peace to the next day a nation at war. And this time it was on our soil and it was nationwide. That's what we hope doesn't happen, but we have to think like that.
Well, I'm going to come back to the county guardianship in just one moment. But before we do, when I hear you say these things, I can't help but picture Klaus Schwab talking about the World Economic Forum and, more importantly, the Great Reset. And so anyone that's been paying attention for the last 4 years know that our lives have been much more chaotic, much more about life has been uncertain. And knowing what just occurred with this incident in Baltimore on the bridge there, I would like you to please put that in context. Is this part, the do you view this as potentially a sabotage, as an attack? And if so, it seems to me if I were a bad guy, what I might do is not only have all of these illegals coming in from the northern and the southern borders, not to mention the east and the west, but also I would be doing things to cripple and destabilize all of the infrastructure that's occurring in America. Do you see it this as part of the big picture? And does what we're talking about fit into the Great Reset?
Well, first of all, regarding the Baltimore and the ship hitting the bridge, first, I want to start by saying that we must first be cautious and not come out within minutes of an event and say, "Oh, that's the Great Reset. This is a cyber attack. This is terrorism. This is because it may not play out to be that way. It could just be one of those days where bad things happen.
Sure.
And so I'm perfectly willing to accept that that could be the reality here. However, our government has sowed plenty of lies across this nation and has earned the reputation of not being trustworthy and desiring to destroy things, it seems like, as fast as possible in as many places as possible, directly or by allowing bad actors to do what bad actors do best. So we also have to, on the other hand, be not just completely wiping out or writing off the idea that there was some level of intention with this. That is certainly possible. And if someone has proof either way that they can put before me and it's not a Twitter post and that just says some things and I'm like, okay, show me the money, right? Then we have to be careful because one of the things we can't do is constantly be reacting to every bad things that happen and say, that's terrorism or that's government initiated or that's a cyber attack or space attack. It could be, but ultimately what I do is I try to step back and look at patterns. And so is this specific instance, would it fit in the general pattern? Absolutely. Is it something that if I were what's called an opposing force or a red team type of actor or an enemy force, is it something that I would consider doing as a way to disrupt America's transportation, communication, logistics, and things like that? No, absolutely I would. For the same reason Ukraine is attacking the Kerch Bridge and trying to destroy Russia's logistics in the Crimean Peninsula. I mean, that's always a possibility that we have to consider. Does it fit in this idea of Klaus Schwab's Great Reset Anything that leads to greater government action, control, and push for compliance fits in the Great Reset. Now, whether or not they plan it or whether they take advantage of the chaos, is that, the old phrase, chaos is a ladder. Well, they're going to use the ladder to their own end
Mhm.
because that's really all they want. They want to control you. They want your compliance. After that, well, you can do whatever you want. As long as you're a quiet and compliant lapdog, you're okay. As soon as you're telling the truth or coming out with reasonable, arguments against what they're doing, they're going to find a way to remove you as soon as they can based on your level of influence.
All good points. So let's go back to what you were talking about earlier. Can you describe what Restore Liberty is and how it can help America deal with all these pressing issues that we're talking about?
Well, Restore Liberty was a title we picked for our organization based on the fact that we also called that our mission. So it's our name, it's our mission. That's really all there is to it. Of course, that's simplification of, well, so what, then how? Well, going back to build a network of people across the country that you can trust before anything bad happens. And we've been doing it for 4 years and it's working really well. And as you get state directors in place, then they start building that county guardian program that we can get into in a little bit. But structured, we're a nonprofit educational arm, we're a nonprofit advocacy arm because we want to fight in the political realm as it exists right now and do the best we can and find those who we trust. We're working a merchandise line, not the most important part of what we do, but we're out there focused on state sovereignty, state rights, focus local, rebuild, reestablish, and defend the community from all adversaries, foreign and domestic, and rebuild this nation the way it's supposed to look under the Constitution from the ground up. Because we kind of look at Washington D.C. as it's 90% of the Titanic is underwater, and we're trying to save the rest of it with a dinghy. Well, most of it, frankly, you need to focus on your county, your city, and things like that. That's ultimately what Restore Liberty is. It's the people, and we're going to succeed by addressing the problems at state and county level, whatever those problems look like, and the people we find are going to work on solving those. And we're going to develop this national vision that says, act locally, think nationally for impact. But DC is by and large, it's a monster too big right now without divine providence.
Absolutely. So with that, as building on what you just said, what is your association with our group, Kootenai Stability and Resilience Group here in North Idaho?
Well, your organization there in North Idaho is a title that came out of the idea of Restore Liberty's County Guardian program. So that model is something that, frankly, I started as an individual and with two other people when I built a neighborhood watch here in Helena, Montana in January of 2020. And of course, January 2020 is 11 months before the election, right? Everybody's, summer of love hasn't arrived. So I'm sitting here building this neighborhood watch of a small team of people, having no idea that this thing was going to grow into Restore Liberty, the County Guardian program, and all these things nationwide and have an international footprint as well. So that's where it came from. That's what the County Guardian program was for. And so as part of that County Guardian program, that's when Blaine Holt started your group in Coeur d'Alene in that model. And so what we're trying to do is basically, because Coeur d'Alene is such a conservative area, we're going to say, you know what, this is one of those areas where we can show what this can look like on a much larger scale. Mm-hmm. And then we can replicate that across multiple counties across the country that, none of them are responsible to some sort of command structure all the way up to myself and Blaine Holt. That's not how we want it to work. But we can provide a model, we can provide education, and we can link people together in groups together that all of us working together can magnify our voice, magnify our effectiveness, and our capabilities. And in that most dangerous course of action scenario, though, let's just say that there is a societal collapse, and let's place the blame mostly on our national debt, which tends to take countries down throughout history, is when they run those kinds of debts. If that were to happen, there's a power vacuum in the United States. And what typically happens in a power vacuum is most of the time thugs fight out who's going to be in charge.
Hmm.
Who's the thug that's going to sit on the Game of Thrones type of scenario? Well, our idea is if we have this network of people across the country, what you do is you accelerate the time frame between a collapse, a recovery, and included in that recovery is the ability to rebuild national government based on the Constitution and Declaration of Independence that we already have,
Hmm.
because there's no need to rewrite it. We might be able to tweak it in small places here and there, but if we just used it the way it was intended to be used with its intent, things would look a lot better. So we say, in the event of a collapse like that, we are building a plan to put us back where we should be already. While also hoping that we don't suffer that kind of collapse in the first place. But I don't think that's too realistic, given the $34 trillion in debt plus now.
Well, I can say personally, we're very grateful to partner with you in this way, and I think this is the model to do it. I was telling someone earlier today that it's a fool's errand to put our faith in national leaders,
Mm.
see the ways that they've disappointed us. Instead, we should be doing what we should have done decades ago, which is to get involved, to care about what's going on, and to take personal responsibility. Before we wrap today, I just want to ask you one last question. How can regular, everyday people who see the writing on the wall, who are concerned about these things, how can they get more involved, and how can they get more prepared?
Well, I'll take it two directions. The first one being, if you go to our website, restore-liberty.org, and you can go on there and you can find what we call our practical tacticals. And so that's really focused on the political arena. And people are focused on Washington, D.C. and Congress and Senate and all that garbage. That's just the sinking ship. And we say bring it back to local. And so if you feel like you're by yourself, look at that practical tactical sheet and find one thing that is your passion. And if it's education or if it's environment, whatever that is, start with yourself and then find one or two other people and keep growing from there. That's what I did. Okay. 4+ years ago now. And it's turned into all this. It starts small, but it grows as you find people that you trust. So that's a way to stay local, to find your passion,
Hmm.
to figure out what level you want to work at. And that way you can take your mind off of the garbage that's going on in DC
Hmm.
and do what you can to fix where you're at. Because DC's so far gone, like I said, act of providence is what that's going to take. The other side of it is, how do you prepare for worst case scenarios, whether it be civil defense or civil response to natural disasters? I mean, you can list out a number of things, but when I travel the country and I speak to groups, I say, make it simple. Focus on food, water, shelter, medical supplies, and energy as you need it to conduct whatever you need to have done. And then take each one of those and get enough for yourself for 6 months, then get enough for your family for 6 months. And if that's too much financially or for some other reason, then do it for 30 days.
Hmm.
Make a difference in small bits. Don't try to look at it as an entire huge problem at one time. It's overwhelming.
Right.
And then as you do that, then you think about it from a community perspective. I mean, what's wrong with buying a shipping container and filling it full of supplies for a small group of about 15 to 20 people? You can do that.
Hmm.
Uh, and this isn't some sort of militia activity. I don't even want to play Army anymore. 30 years, I'm retired. I don't want to do that stuff. But I think it's good for us to be realistic and say that earthquakes out here in Montana, tornadoes in the Midwest, hurricanes in Florida, whatever, those things that you're doing for civil defense and preparedness can be used for a number of things. And you can become a community leader by being one of those who's ready to be the leader who is prepared to deal with it. There's negative sides to all this too if you make a target of yourself in a larger context. But if you stick to trusted small teams and focus on that food, water, shelter, medical, and energy, then you can start to chip away at it and at least know that you've got even a small plan and develop it from there. And then reach out to us. Yeah, Restore Liberty through our website, and we provide lots of stuff that can help too.
Wonderful. We're going to put that on this video here so that everyone will have that link as well. And I just want to say thank you for your time today, and really thank you for what you're doing for America. It was great talking with you.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to join you.
Thank you.